is your latest African news. Mauritania. Ex-Guantanamo prisoner sues Canada over alleged role in his detention. A former Guantanamo detainee who spent 14 years without trial and whose story was told in a hit film, The Mauritanian, is suing Canada over its alleged role in his detention. Mohamedou Ould Slahi, 51, claims that Canada authorities provided false information concerning the period when he was a permanent resident in Montreal in 1999, which led to his arrest and subsequent torture at the infamous U.S. prison. According to his complaint, Slahi is seeking $28 million for the damages he suffered. In the lawsuit, Slahi says he faced physical beatings, sleep deprivation, forced standing, incessant noise, sexual assault, mock assassinations, death threats, religious humiliation, and more while at Guantanamo. Slahi's story was a best-selling book that was adapted for the screen. Following the September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States, Slahi came under suspicion of involvement in the unsuccessful plot to bomb Los Angeles in 1999. Arrested in 2001 in Mauritania, he was then successively imprisoned in Jordan and Afghanistan before arriving at Guantanamo in 2002 in what he called in his book a world tour of torture and humiliation. He was released in 2016. Cameroon. Cameroon signs Russian military deal. Cameroon has signed an agreement with Russia for military cooperation. According to security sources, this agreement is part of the continuation of military ties between the two countries for several years, with the emphasis recently on the revision of the military deal signed in 2015. In the 13-page document, the two countries agreed to exchange opinions and information on defense policies and international security, development of relations in the areas of joint training, medicine, topography, or military hydrography. They also agreed to exchange experiences and interactions in peace support operations under the aegis of the United Nations. The symbolic deal established in Moscow comes as several countries around the world withdraw ties with Kremlin to impose sanctions. Niger. Niger Parliament votes in favor of foreign troop presence. MPs in Niger have approved legislation that would allow the deployment of more European special forces in the country to help in the fight against insurgents. Parliament on April 22nd voted overwhelmingly in favor of the proposed bill, with 131 votes saying yes and 31 saying no. Niger's Prime Minister Ouhamadou Mahamadou rejected criticism from opponents to the bill and told parliamentarians that the country was virtually surrounded by armed terrorist groups. Civil society groups have raised concerns about the presence of foreign troops, saying they threaten national sovereignty. Guinea. Former Guinean leader Alpha Condé set free by the military government. Guinea's ousted President Alpha Condé is finally free and can receive visitors, the military who overthrew him has said. Condé became Guinea's first democratically elected president in 2010, but the 84-year-old was deposed by army officers last year and replaced by Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. He was allowed to go to the United Arab Emirates for medical treatment in January, coming back to Guinea on April 10th. The statement said Condé will stay at his wife's house in the capital Conakry until his own private house is constructed in the suburb of Kipe. The coup followed fierce protests over Condé's successful bid for a third term in office, which critics said breached the constitution. Doumbouya, who has been sworn in as interim president, has promised to restore civilian rule but resisted international pressure to commit to a date. Central African Republic. Country passes bill to make Bitcoin legal. The Central African Republic has unanimously adopted a bill to make Bitcoin legal tender in the country. As per the report, the Central African Parliament Bill was approved on April 21, 2022. CAR is the first country in Africa to take the initiative to make Bitcoin a legal tender. The Digital Economy, Post Services and Telecommunications Minister Guna Zako and the Finance Minister Kaliste Nganongo started the initiative and prepared the draft for the Bitcoin law. As the adoption and popularity of cryptocurrencies increase, it has been marked as an important asset class for various investors to add to their portfolios. The adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender will transform the country's infrastructure, which will allow the nation to implement blockchain technology in various sectors. Diaspora. Nelson Mandela mural unveiled in Liverpool. A mural of Nelson Mandela has been unveiled in Liverpool ahead of a planned visit by his family. The artwork in Toxteth pays tribute to the South African leader who was given freedom of the city of Liverpool in 1994 for his role in ending apartheid. Created by local artist John Culshaw, it shows Mr. Mandela in deep thought. Stephen Nze, ambassador for charity Mandela Aid, who commissioned the piece, said he hoped the mural would inspire people to stop and think. The mural on the Kumba Imani Millennial Center building on Princes Road is the first of two new memorial pieces being created in the area. A memorial garden in the city's Princes Park will be unveiled by Dr. Mandela and granddaughter Tokwini Mandela in July. It includes a bridge across the lake, a pavilion, and inscriptions of Mr. Mandela's quotes. The family visited the site of the garden in 2019, but the project, which was due to be completed in 2020, was delayed for 2 years due to the coronavirus pandemic. East Africa. Rwanda's Kagame meets Museveni as ties warm. Rwanda's President Paul Kagame arrived in Uganda, making his first visit to the country in 4 years as the relationship between the two East African nations improves following long-simmering tensions. Public broadcaster Rwanda Broadcasting Agency announced that Kagame had arrived in Kampala to meet his Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni and attend the 48th birthday party of Museveni's son Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who has been instrumental in the rapprochement between the two neighbors. Kainerugaba has played a key role in repairing long hostile relations between Kigali, including holding talks with Kagame that led to a reopening of the land border in January after 3 years of closure. The Ugandan High Commission in Kigali said Kagame was on a private visit, adding that Kainerugaba and Security Minister Jim Muhwezi were among the senior government officials who received the Rwandan leader. Kagame last visited Uganda in March 2018 on Museveni's invitation for private talks on bilateral, regional and international issues. Togo. MPs pass a vote to join the Commonwealth. Togo's parliament has passed a resolution asking the government to make a formal bid for membership of the Commonwealth, a group of mainly former British colonies. The country is already a member of the Economic Organization of West African States (ECOWAS) and International Organization of La Francophonie, a group of French-speaking countries that are mostly former French colonies. The resolution, passed on 23 April, asked the government to submit its application for Commonwealth membership at the bloc's next summit in Rwanda in June. The West African nation embarked on the process of joining the Commonwealth in 2014. Burkina Faso. Sankara trial resumes to discussion compensation. A military court in Burkina Faso has started a hearing on the interests of the civil parties in the case of Thomas Sankara and his 12 companions. The lawyers for the civil parties demand that the state and the accused be jointly and severely liable and obliged to compensate all the damage suffered by the families. Thomas Sankara, seen by many as a revolutionary president, was murdered in 1987. Earlier this month, former Burkinabe President Blaise Compaoré was sentenced in absentia to life in prison by a military court in Ouagadougou. Compaoré is currently living in exile in Ivory Coast and is an Ivorian citizen since 2016. The Sankara family is asking for the symbolic sum of 1 franc as compensation for damages. The Burkinabe lawyers representing the family are not charging for their services. The military court will render its decision on May 10th. Mozambique and Madagascar, another storm to hit Mozambique and Madagascar. Madagascar and Mozambique authorities have warned of another impending storm. The two countries, along with their neighbors in southern Africa, have been hit by 5 cyclones this year alone. According to the World Weather Attribution Network, between January and March, 3 tropical cyclones and 2 tropical storms hit southern Africa, with 230 people killed and more than 1 million affected. At 10 a.m. local time on April 25th, its center was positioned about 363 kilometers west-northwest of Morobe and could make landfall on Atsimo and Rifana on the evening of the 26th, Madagascar's Natural Disaster Management Agency said. Mozambique warned the storm could hit the south of Nampula province and the north of Inhambane. According to the National Institute of Meteorology (INAM), Jasmine could be characterized by strong winds of up to 100 km per hour and gusts of 120 km that could generate waves of 9 meters. It was likely to occur at sea with no need for alarm on the mainland, INAM added. Mozambique to launch $96 billion wealth fund as gas export begins this year. Mozambique has announced plans to set up a $96 billion wealth fund by the end of 2022 as it prepares to commence export of its natural gas. According to the country's Minister of Economy and Finance, Max Tonella, the relevant legislation is being drafted as Mozambique targets an October date for the fund to become operational just before exports begin at the offshore Coral South Gas project. Under the terms of the Wealth Fund, 50% of accrued revenue will be re-injected into it, while the other half will go toward government budget in the first 20 years of LNG production. Minister Tonella, who was previously Mozambique's energy minister, was in Washington, D.C. for meetings with the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and has discussions with representatives from ExxonMobil. Total Energies is expected to resume a $20 billion project which, when completed, will produce an estimated 13 million tons of liquefied natural gas per year, while ExxonMobil has said it will make the final decision on its own Mozambique gas project in the coming month. This is in addition to the $7 billion NESPA-run Coral floating LNG project that will mark Mozambique's foray into gas exploration and production. Zimbabwe's president warns banks could be stripped of licenses. Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has said banks and companies involved in local currency manipulation and unjustifiable increases in the prices of goods and services could lose their operating licenses, according to a report by a state media outlet. The government has identified the entities responsible, the Sunday Mail cited the president as saying. The administration is devising methods to deal with those banks and companies, and the plans will be announced in due course. The local currency officially trades at 155.14 Zimbabwean dollars to the US dollar, but readily changes hands on the streets of Harare at 350 Zimbabwean dollars. The Zimbabwe dollar weakened 24% in the first quarter, while on the black market it depreciated about 20%. Annual inflation rose to 72.7% in March.
Africa-wide, African Union endorses EAC force deployment to Democratic Republic of Congo. The African Union has endorsed the decision by the East African community leaders to deploy a regional force to restore peace and stability in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. In a statement, AU Commission Chairperson Moussa Faki Mohamed commended the leaders for their common efforts in finding a sustainable solution to the situation of the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo and the Great Lakes region as a whole. Last week in a meeting in Nairobi, EAC leaders urged rebel groups in Democratic Republic of Congo to lay down their arms, and they invited them for talks in Kenya. The leaders agreed that should the armed groups not heed to the call for dialogue, they will deploy a regional force against to maintain peace and stability in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The meeting between Democratic Republic of Congo president and the armed groups initially failed to take off due to logistical challenges, according to officials, but a few armed groups were able to meet last week for talks. Worldwide, Elon Musk strikes deal to buy Twitter for $44 billion. The board of Twitter has agreed to a $44 billion or £34.5 billion takeover from the billionaire Elon Musk. Mr. Musk, who made the shock bid less than 2 weeks ago, said Twitter had tremendous potential that he would unlock. He also called for a series of changes, from relaxing its content restrictions to eradicating fake accounts. The firm initially rebuffed Mr. Elon Musk's bid, but it will now ask shareholders to vote to approve the deal. Mr. Musk is the world's richest person according to Forbes magazine, with an estimated net worth of $273.6 billion, mostly due to his shareholding in electric vehicle maker Tesla, which he runs. He also leads the aerospace firm SpaceX. In a statement announcing the deal, Mr. Musk said that free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated, adding that he would make Twitter better than ever by enhancing the product with new features, making the algorithm open source to increase trust, defeating spam bots, and authenticating all humans. The move comes as Twitter faces growing pressure from politicians and regulators over the content that appears on its platform. It has drawn critics from left and right over its efforts to mediate misinformation on the platform. Southern Africa. Historic return of rhinos at Zinave National Park after 40 years. The government of Mozambique and South Africa have announced plans to reintroduce rhino species to the Zinave National Park in southern Mozambique, which became extinct 40 years ago. Maputo and Pretoria jointly approved the reintroduction of more than 40 rhinos to a special constructed high-security sanctuary within the 4,000 square kilometers or 1,540 square mile park. The rhinos will be translocated from South Africa over a period of 1 to 2 years. The project is being spearheaded by the South African non-governmental organization Peace Parks Foundation and Exaro Resources Company, which is a coal and mining firm. Since 2016, a rewilding program has reintroduced more than 2,300 animals representing 14 species, including buffaloes, elephants, and leopards, into the park. In 2002, Mozambique, South Africa, and Zimbabwe entered into a treaty to establish the Great Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area, spanning over 100,000 square kilometers or 3,860 square miles, and incorporating 5 national parks, including the iconic Kruger National Park. The Zinave Park, however, lies in the shadows of a dark past when it was ravaged during the Mozambique Civil War that ended in 1992 and subsequent poaching. Angola. Angola's historic first oil platform to be launched in June. President of Angola, João Lourenço, has disclosed that the Southern African nation will launch her historic first oil platform in June. President Lourenço made the disclosure during a 3-day visit to Cabinda province, during which the project was presented to him. The Sea Swift offshore platform named Lifua A is under construction at the Malong camp in Cabinda province and should be launched into the sea in a few weeks. Sea Swift is a minimum facility offshore platform for rapid returns in shallow waters, using well conductors as a structural support for the topside. Sea Swift minimizes build and implementation times. The platforms offer a low-risk, low-cost route to reduced time to first oil and lower capital investment. Supported by Cabinda Gulf Oil Company Limited, the project required a budget of $60 million. The project, which is part of the upturn in the Angolan oil sector, is intended to create 400 direct jobs and will have its entry into production in late 2023. Uganda. Uganda beats 13 teams to win the 2022 African Rugby Sevens. The The Ugandan rugby team has defeated 13 countries in grand style to win the 2022 Africa Rugby Sevens. In a game that concluded 22-12, Kenya was ousted by Uganda, who played on a saturated turf at home. The Rugby Cranes remained composed and improved game by game, defeating Zimbabwe 26-0 to win the championships. Uganda, like Zimbabwe and Kenya, has a difficult season ahead of them in terms of tournament preparation. They have only a few months to be in condition to compete with Fiji, the United Kingdom, Samoa, and New Zealand. 14 teams took part in the tournament, including rising stars Burundi, Senegal, and Burkina Faso, drawing a promising scene and more representation of the continent at the International Rugby Board circuit. The Uganda national sevens team biggest accomplishments has been to win a berth at the 2016 Dubai Sevens. The 2022 Africa Men's Sevens are an annual Africa Rugby Sevens tournament that took place at the Kyadondo Rugby Club in Kampala between 23rd and 24th April 2022. They were held in Uganda for the second time. Democratic Republic of Congo. Papa Wemba's house transformed into Rumba Museum. The Kinshasa residence of Congolese star singer Papa Wemba was transformed into a museum of Congolese rumba on April 24th, open to the public in the Democratic Republic of Congo, 6 years after the artist's death on stage. After Papa Wemba's death in Abidjan in 2016, the Congolese government decided to buy his main residence, a luxurious villa located in the heights of the posh Makampane neighborhood in the western part of Kinshasa. At the entrance, an image of the Congolese star's arms raised is engraved on the gates. In the living room of this sumptuous villa, 7 hats of this Congolese music icon are on display. The attention is immediately drawn to the golden sculpture of an angel that sits next to a black and white portrait of the king of Rumba. Present at the ceremony, the leader of the Ivorian group Magic System hoped that all artistic categories would be represented in the museum because Papa Wemba was a complete artist. The Congolese idol died on stage on 24th April 2016 while participating in the 9th edition of the Anomabu Urban Music Festival, organized by Magic System. Father of 6 children, dressing in the finest fashion houses, Papa Wemba had been one of the most popular African singers for over 40 years. With his high voice and flamboyant personality, he was one of the great figures of Congolese rumba. Diaspora. Harvard University creates a $100 million slavery reparation fund. America's historically racist institution, Harvard University, has announced it will commit $100 million to redress its role in slavery as more U.S. institutions move toward reparations for historical injustices. Harvard said it was putting the money into a fund to help tackle the educational and social gaps caused by the legacies of the slave trade and racism. The move follows a wide-ranging internal review of the university's role in slavery, the results of which were posted on its website. The 100-page report made several recommendations about how the money should be spent, including the improvement of educational opportunities for descendant communities, honoring enslaved people through memorials and research, and creating partnership with black colleges and universities. It also recommended identifying and supporting direct descendants of black and Native American enslaved individuals who labored on Harvard's campus and who were enslaved by previous Harvard leaders. Harvard was founded in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1636. The report found that Harvard staff, including 4 presidents, enslaved more than 70 individuals until slavery was outlawed in the state in 1783. The report also found that the university benefited from extensive financial ties to slavery, including donations from slave traders. It said that from the mid-19th century well into the 20th century, Harvard presidents and prominent professors promoted race science and eugenics and conducted abusive research, including the photographing of enslaved and subjugated human beings. Nigeria. Presidential aspirant urges name change for Nigeria. Nigeria's presidential aspirant Adamu Gaba wants the country's name to be changed to the Nigerian Federation, or simply Nigritia. He says the name change will be part of the reforms he will pursue if he wins the elections. Nigerian presidential elections will be held in February 2023. He cited other African countries like Ghana, Kenya, Benin, and Togo that changed their colonially induced names on independence, arguing that identity is everything. Mr. Gaba has also posted a video demonstrating the right way of pronouncing the proposed new name. Rwanda. Opposition leader warns UK-Rwanda migration deal could create conflicts. A Rwandan opposition lawmaker slammed the Rwanda-UK asylum seekers deal, arguing it could create budget difficulties and destabilize the society in the long run. Frank Habineza, a Rwandan opposition lawmaker, has criticized Britain's decision to send asylum seekers to his home country. He is one of the rare critical voices on the matter in the East African country. The president of Democratic Green Party of Rwanda called the deal inhumane, questioning its legality. This comment comes weeks after the British and the Rwandan Foreign Affairs ministers announced what they called a migration and economic development partnership. In the terms disclosed, the agreement will see Britain send to Rwanda those arriving illegally in the UK and they could settle in the African country. Frank Habineza believes this influx of population could destabilize the Rwandan society in the long run and create budget difficulties. The lack of opinion poll on the matter makes it difficult to know how the plan is received by the Rwandans. Mali. Mali accuses France of spying. Mali has reprimanded France for spying after the French military released a video of what is alleged were Russian soldiers burying bodies at a mass grave. Paris said the video, filmed using a drone, was of a military base near Gossi in northern Mali. It accused Russia of joining a campaign to smear departing French soldiers who were kicked out. Mali's military government said the drone illegally flew over the base on 20th April, the day after French forces handed the site back to Mali. It accused France of attempting to destroy the reputation of Malian forces. The military government said French forces were guilty of subversion by publishing false images worked up to accuse the Malian army of responsibility for killing civilians with the aim of tarnishing their image. Authorities added that the bodies were in such an advanced stage of putrefaction that its soldiers could not have been responsible for their deaths. France is winding down its almost decade-long military occupation in the West African state, but in February it was forced to pull out its troops after falling out with the military government, especially over its interference in the country. Tunisia. Tunisian judge detains crew of ship that sank off its coast. A judge from Tunisia detained 7 members of a commercial ship's crew. The commercial ship had sunk off the city of Gabes, a judicial official declared, as authorities thoroughly investigated if the vessel may have sank deliberately. Tunisian officials had said that this month the ship sank as it was sailing to Malta from Equatorial Guinea, loaded with up to 1,000 tons of oil, and the Tunisian Navy was able to rescue all crew members. Officials later mentioned that a specialized diving team was asked to counter a probable environmental disaster. It found that the cargo was not loaded with fuel, but rather was seen to be empty. An investigation was being conducted to determine if the ship sank under normal circumstances or was sank to obtain compensation from insurance companies, and to look into the possibility of oil smuggling. The crew of the ship were 4 Turks, 2 Azerbaijanis, and 1 from Georgia. The crew claimed that the ship's route documentation had been lost. Ethiopia. Ethiopia arrests 4 suspects over hotel bomb attacks. Ethiopian authorities have arrested 4 suspects in connection with April 24th bomb attacks on a hotel in Harar. The explosion happened on Sunday night as Ethiopians across the country celebrated the Easter holiday. 8 people were hurt. 4 of the 8 victims were treated for minor injuries and returned home immediately, while the rest remain in critical condition and are receiving treatment at nearby hospitals. No group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. The attack comes one day after Ethiopian authorities announced the arrest of 34 suspected members of the Al-Shabaab terror group. Kenya. Kenya court rules father can get custody of minors. Based on a landmark ruling by a Kenyan court, men in Kenya can now have custody of children below the age of 9 years. The judgment, issued by resident judge Justice Noel Ngugi, directed although the tender years doctrine is persuasive in considering custody of children, it can no longer be considered an inflexible rule of law. He added that the judicial rule, the child of tender years belongs with a mother, is merely an application of the principle in appropriate cases. While delivering judgment in a case where a couple was fighting for custody of their 2 children aged 9 years and 15 years, the judge said the tender years doctrine must now be explicitly subjected to the best interest of the child principle in determining custody cases. Algeria. Algeria threatens to cut Spain's gas supply. Algeria has threatened to cut off gas supplies to Spain if any of the gas winds up in a different location than specified by a contract. Transporting any amount of Algerian gas to a different destination is considered a breach of contractual obligation, and that would lead to the termination of the contract binding state-owned energy company Sonatrach and the Spanish customer. Algeria's energy minister said in a statement, "As Algeria broke diplomatic relations with the Moroccan administration, the Maghreb-Europe gas pipeline, with a capacity of 12 billion cubic meters connecting Algeria to Spain via Morocco, has not been used since last October." Spain's energy minister earlier confirmed that it planned to ship gas to Morocco, but noted that none of that gas would be of Algerian origin. Ghana. Plans underway to rebury Ghana's Nkrumah. Ghana's opposition convention People's Party (CPP) has announced plans to rebury the country's founding leader Kwame Nkrumah in November. The independence-era ruling party says Mr. Nkrumah wasn't given a fitting burial by the state following his death in April 1972, and that his soul was still restless. Mr. Nkrumah died 50 years ago while being treated in Bucharest, Romania, and was buried in his village in southern Ghana. His remains were later transferred to a mausoleum in the capital, Accra. The CCP party said it will soon unveil a timetable of activities that will accumulate into Mr. Nkrumah's actual funeral. It did not offer details whether it plans to exhume and rebury Mr. Nkrumah's remains at another site. Local outlet Joy News has published a video of the remarks by the party's General Secretary Nana Yaya Jantua on the proposed reburial. West Africa. Burkina Faso, Guinea request more time to present transition plans. Burkina Faso and Guinea, where the military has seized power by force, have asked their West African neighbors for more time to come up with a timetable for the transition. This comes after the expiration of the Monday 25th April ultimatum. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has said. ECOWAS announced that it would send missions to the two countries before a forthcoming summit of heads of state at unspecified dates. The authorities of both countries have made it clear that they do not intend to submit to ECOWAS demands at the risk of being subjected to new sanctions. Burkina Faso, through government spokesman Lionel Bilgo, said it did not intend to shorten the 3-year transition period before civilians returned to power. On the Conakry side, the Guinean government insisted that it would not act under constraints or under the dictate of anyone. Government spokesman Ousmane Gol said in response to a question about the possibility of Guinea withdrawing from ECOWAS, Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya has been Guinea's leader since September 2021 after overthrowing Alpha Condé. Nigeria. Nigeria's Senate wants ransom payers to go to jail. The Nigerian state has passed a bill imposing jail terms of at least 15 years to anyone paying a ransom to free someone who has been kidnapped. Critics say the move is unfair as it criminalizes people who are desperate to free their relatives. The new law will also provide the death penalty or life in prison for anyone found guilty of kidnapping. For more than a decade, Nigeria has been struggling to deal with a deadly wave of kidnappings for ransom by armed groups. The bill needs to be debated and passed by the lower house before the president signs it into law, a process that could take weeks or months. Ethiopia. TPLF terrorists completely pull out of Afar. TPLF. The TPLF have finally withdrawn from the neighboring region of Afar in Ethiopia, a spokesperson has said, as the Afar police commissioner said the TPLF remained in several districts within the region. The police commissioner in Afar, Ahmed Arif, said Tigrayan forces had withdrawn from the town of Abala but were still in 3 of the region's districts and were in control of the highway between Abala and Tigray's capital Mekelle. Northern Ethiopia has been beset by conflict since November 2020. Democratic Republic of Congo. Apple, Tesla, and Intel under pressure over minerals from Democratic Republic of Congo. A new report has warned that a scheme set up to ensure mining in the Democratic Republic of Congo does not fuel conflict is being abused to launder tainted minerals. Global Witness says companies including Apple, Tesla, and Intel are relying on the due diligence scheme to source minerals that are widely used in electronic equipment such as mobile phones, computers, and automotive and aeronautical systems. Those behind the initiative have denied the allegations. For years, they have been warning that some minerals sourced in Democratic Republic of Congo that are used in electronic devices are from mines controlled by armed groups. A scheme was launched to try to prevent these so-called blood minerals reaching the international market. Great news! Tunacheki, Kunde Kids and Nala have partnered together to bring you Maua and the Gardens of Plenty, our first African children's book for free. Nala is a money transfer app that uses the latest technology and works with local communities to make payments as hassle-free as possible. The easy-to-use app allows anyone to quickly send money from the UK to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, with many other African countries and currencies coming soon, at the lowest rates available. To get a free copy of Maua and the Gardens of Plenty for yourself, family or friends, download the Nala app, use the code KUNDEKIDS and make a transfer of as little as £1. For those in the USA, you can download the app and RSVP for your free book coming next month. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, follow, share and like our video. It's the best way of supporting us. And remember, Africa is watching.